Alright, I thought I would make a video just on the arrest warrant itself in the Mollie Tibbetts case regarding Christian BAHENA Rivera. It's a pretty standard arrest warrant, and I'm making this video because I have discussed it in my live streams that I've put on, but I don't think you should have to dig through the whole live stream. Some of them are 3 hours long just to find the information on the arrest warrant. So, it's a standard arrest warrant. You have the suspect's name, Christian BAHENA Rivera, the case number, his personal statistics, his eyes are brown, hair black, he was born June 11th, 1994, height 5'6", weight 130 pounds, and he's a male, obviously, and he's a pretty skinny guy and not very tall. The next part that's actually useful in here is the location of the offense. So right here you see offense, and the location was a highway, road, or alley, and the 1900 block of 385th Street is where the incident took place. I'm assuming that's based on what Rivera told them. Now, Mollie was jogging, and she ran up this direction, down this road, and apparently the offense took place right here at the 1900 block of 385th Avenue. Alright, now if you were going to compare that to the whole town of Brooklyn, remember she was staying over here at this house, probably went on a jogging route like this, or possibly up this street, took a left, and she was approached right here on 385th Avenue. In this area. Alright, now let's take a look at the actual narrative of the arrest warrant. This is where you really get into the heart of what this case is all about. Of course, he has a memory problem of all of the portions that have to do with the actual killing of Mollie. So on July 19th, 2018, Mollie Tibbetts was reported as a missing person to the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office. Shortly after Tibbetts was reported missing, video footage was collected from an area on the east side of Brooklyn, Poweshiek County, Iowa. The video was from the evening of July 18, 2018. After review of the video, it was determined that Mollie Tibbetts was running near the area of Boundary and Middle Streets when a dark-colored Chevy Malibu was in the same vicinity. The dark-colored Chevy Malibu can be seen numerous times driving back and forth in the area. It was determined through other investigation that the dark-colored Chevy Malibu was connected to Christian Rivera. Now, here is that location. This is Boundary Street, and right here is Middle Street. So this area right here is the area that they say they saw her on surveillance along with the dark Malibu vehicle that Rivera drove. Now, after looking around for a long time, I actually think that this is the surveillance camera that showed those activities right there. I think it's pointing exactly in that direction. This is that intersection. So I believe that is the surveillance camera that recorded those movements in that area. So now let's get back to the arrest warrant. Rivera was then questioned by law enforcement about the disappearance of Tibbetts on August 20th, 2018. Rivera admitted to contact with a female running in Brooklyn and that he pursued her in a vehicle in an area east of Brooklyn, Poweshiek County, Iowa. Defendant Rivera stated he parked the vehicle and got out and was running behind her and alongside of her. Rivera stated she grabbed her phone and said, "I'm going to call the police." Rivera said he then panicked and got mad, and that he then blocked his memory, which is what he does when he gets very upset and doesn't remember anything after that until he came to at an intersection. So he apparently has the ability to intentionally block his memory. Rivera stated he then made a U-turn, drove back to an entrance to a field, and then drove into a driveway to a cornfield. He noticed there was an earpiece from headphones in his lap, and that is how he realized he put her in the trunk. You know, because all of us, when we find something in our lap, we immediately associate it with somebody in our trunk. You know, I've had my glasses in my lap before, and I didn't look down at my glasses and go, oh my God, there must be a dead body in the trunk. All right, so what this is doing here is it's actually showing that he then remembers the whole thing, because now he remembers, oh yeah, the girl that I killed had the headphones on, and now I know she's in the trunk. Because the only way you could make that assumption is if you actually then remembered the whole thing. So this whole thing about him not remembering anything is completely garbage, okay? Again, he noticed there was an earpiece from headphones in his lap, and that is how he realized he put her in the trunk. He went to get her out of the trunk, and he noticed blood on the side of her head. Of course, he'll claim he doesn't know how the blood got on her head. The defendant, Rivera, described the female's clothing that she was wearing, including an earphone or headphone set. And the defendant further described during the interview that he dragged Tibbetts on foot from his vehicle to a secluded location in a cornfield. So that's a little bit odd, because now it seems like he took her out of the trunk and then dragged her a ways. Then he picked her up over his shoulder and then walked into the cornfield, so about 20 meters. So the thing is the 20 meters might not actually be from the road, as I previously thought. Somebody on YouTube named Just Saying showed me an article that discussed it was 500 yards into the cornfield. Okay, and let's take a look at that article right now. The body of Iowa college student Mollie Tibbetts was found 500 yards into a cornfield about 10 to 12 miles south from where police think she was abducted. All right, and then right here it says was found buried under parts of corn stalks, says Mortvet. Her body was 500 yards from a gravel road and not visible from it, he says. Okay, so it could be quite a bit into that cornfield, way farther than I was thinking. All right, so if we go down to the location, let's say it's right here actually, and you go 500 yards into there. Let's get the measuring tool out. Go right there, and then if this is accurate, this article would be about this far in, and it does look like there's still corn there, so I'll put it right there. All right, so there's corn all the way out there, so perhaps he went here and he kept dragging her all the way deep into the cornfield, knowing that people wouldn't find it way out here for a long time, but he led them to her. Previously, it seemed like she might have been right there. I just don't know now, because there is that contradictory article that I just read. So it could be clear out here. So if you read that part again, it makes that possible too. It says, the defendant Rivera described the female's clothing that she was wearing, including an earphone or headphone set. And the defendant further described during the interview that he dragged Tibbetts on foot from his vehicle to a secluded location in a cornfield. Rivera described he put her over his shoulder and took her about 20 meters into the cornfield, and he left her covered in some corn leaves. So perhaps that means that he dragged her way out this direction, then put her over his shoulder, and then took her 20 meters into the corn. Okay, so we just don't know about that, but this is the spot where the vehicles were parked, and it's in this direction. All right, so that's a new bit of information. I don't know how credible that is, but it seems like it's possible that he dragged her, then put her on his shoulders, and you would do that to avoid creating a path that's visible from the air through the corn. Like if you dragged her, it would break down corn stalks and break them down, but if you put her over your shoulder, you can kind of work your way through the corn. Now he is pretty light. He only weighs 130 pounds and she weighed 120, so it would have been difficult, but 20 meters isn't really that difficult. The defendant further described during the interview that he dragged Tibbetts on foot from his vehicle to a secluded location in the cornfield. Rivera described he put her over his shoulder and took her about 20 meters into the cornfield, and he left her covered in some corn leaves and that he left her face up. The defendant was able to use his phone to determine the route he traveled from Brooklyn. Rivera then later guided law enforcement to her location from memory. So just looking at his phone, he just, had this incredible memory where he can lead law enforcement out in an area that's absolutely, everything looks the same. Look at this. So you're talking about, he looks at his phone and he's able to remember exactly where she was put by memory. I don't think he has a memory problem at all. I think he said, let me look at my phone. Maybe I can figure it out because I'm not supposed to have a memory. But he can easily lead them out there because he knows exactly where she is, all right? She's in this area. Law enforcement located the remains of a deceased female in the area Rivera took them to. The physical surroundings of her location and other factors at the scene matched the earlier physical description of the area, as that's where he placed the body. Based on the interview with Rivera, the clothing found at the scene where the body was located, and tentative identification by the medical examiner based on information about certain articles of clothing, the deceased female is Mollie Tibbetts. Now what stood out in this last portion right here is it says, based on the interview with Rivera, the clothing found at the scene where the body was located. It's saying that the clothing wasn't on her. That's how I read this. Okay? You wouldn't say that. You would say the clothing that she was wearing matched the description of what Mollie would have been wearing. Something like that, right? But instead it's saying the clothing found at the scene where the body was located. All right? So how did he get the clothes there as well? All right? So let's say she was naked in his trunk and he needed to get the clothes over there. How did he do that? Did he throw those over his shoulder too? Or did he assault her out in that area and actually took her there, and that's where she was killed and perhaps raped? We don't know if she was raped, but if her clothes wasn't on, I'm sure there was something like that. I'm really hoping, though, that she wasn't clothed and not alive when he brought her back there and then removed her clothes after she was dead. That would make this case even way more disturbing, okay? But those are the different scenarios just based off of facts. If you read this, it says, the clothing found at the scene where the body was located. All right, that is saying that the clothing was not on her. So you can speculate on that and come up with your own conclusions. I just gave you the various scenarios that I see as possibilities. All right, well, that's a look at the arrest warrant. I hope this information was valuable to you and informative. And until next time, everybody, be safe out there.